Your Arizona Wildcats are now Big 12 champs outright. And that's no surprise. And that's not the ultimate prize. We'll talk about Arizona's big win over Iowa State next on Postcast.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Arizona, at the end, an easy win over Iowa State, but in the first half, it was far from easy. Arizona overwhelmed Iowa State with their depth, with their tenacity, and with their defense. Those were the storylines of this one. Arizona able to physically overwhelm what is a very physical team. Early in the game, Iowa State was getting tons of chances, but they started 3 of 17. So you got to take that with a grain of salt. Arizona able to defend at every juncture with multiple bodies. Like, you look at this team and you watch them play Iowa State and you think, okay, the guys to take away are Milan Momcilovic. And then you look at the box score, and Milan Momcilovic, the best shooter in the country, ended up shooting the ball 8 times and scoring 5 points. This is a guy who scores 17 per game and shoots 51% from 3 and is uber prolific. Then a guy who very well could be the Big 12 Player of the Year due to JT Toppin's injury, Joshua Jefferson, scores 12 points on 2 of 17 shooting. And he scores 8 of his 12 points from the free throw line. Had 4 turnovers. Koa Pete guarded him, and you saw Karchenkov and Bradley assume most of the responsibility of guarding Milan Momcilovic. Those were big keys to the game. We talked about that in the prior episode. I'll get to that in a moment. I'll give my takeaways now, but those are too big to not mention. But the defense stands out. Arizona wins by 16. And you hold a team in Iowa State that scores over 80 per game, and they shoot a ton of threes, and they've got a decent bit of variance because of that. You hold them to 57 points. And the other part of this is, I wouldn't say Arizona played overly well offensively against a very good defensive team, number 8 in the nation. And Arizona finished 46% from the field. Like, they're pretty undeniable in the sense that they'll end up near 50% or better from the field. And this took a poor Karchenkov game, 0 baskets. Pete missed a couple bunnies, 2 of 6. Bradley shot 40%. He was very good, but most of his offense came from the free throw line. But the point is, they come in waves, and when they're whole, speaking of Arizona, they've overwhelmed teams with physicality down low. And Krivos was great in this one. He handled the double teams well, but Tobe is allowed to be what Tobe is great at, and that's being a hammer. A guy who comes with energy, and you just cannot contain him. When he's playing 35 minutes, some of his energy and his physicality ends up being difficult to play that way the whole time. And by the way, we got a comment. I was about to bring this up moments ago. It says, I want a Big 12 champ shirt. Well, I'll get one. I made a promise, and I don't know if that was about me or if you actually want one, but I made a promise when Arizona wins the Big 12, and I said when. I didn't say if back then. I said when Arizona wins the Big 12, I'll get a Big 12 champ shirt, so I will do so. I also made the promise of Final Four national champs, Big 12 tournament champs, all the above. So I will honor that. I've got the hat on right here, champs for another one. Another takeaway I have, and I'm going to go through my notes on this before getting distracted because I'm sure I'll talk about other questions and bring things up. So my first takeaway was, this is an extremely physical game, but the defense of Koa Pete on Jefferson and just the athletic ability to wall up against a guy who's a mismatch 4, and there's no mismatches for Arizona, and the ability to funnel into Mo Krivos, who makes every shot near the basket difficult, is important. And then they took Momcilovic out of the game. Though Ivan Karchenkov had a tough game. He was a dare shooter early. The doubles of Iowa State were leaving him as the rotational guy to shoot the ball, and he missed. A couple in and outs, a couple tantalizing misses. He took Momcilovic out of the game along with Bradley. And the top blocking defense made the game very, very difficult for Iowa State because they're a dynamic scorer. The guy who really busts open a defense, it was not able to play. Like, Momcilovic was out of the equation. It was 4-on-4. And I don't know how many of you guys listened to a show I did just an hour. I think I posted it like 6:05 and the game was at 7. So I don't expect tons of you guys to listen to this. But I talked about, because I expect Momcilovic not to get many shots, that Jamarian Bateman would have to be fantastic to have a chance for Iowa State. I wish I had thought of that sooner, but I was just ruminating about the game, and I thought, okay, Jamarian Bateman's really solid. And I think there's going to be less Killian Toure, despite being great defensively, because Iowa State will struggle to score unless one of Lipsy or Jefferson has 30, and they won't. So it made me believe that they needed 3-point shooting, and if Momcilovic doesn't score 30, which he wouldn't against Arizona, he scored 5, it's going to be Jabarian Bateman day. And that was a good thought. He was very good, but let's just look at this statistically, right? Arizona, typically the way to compete with them is you either have to outscore them from 3 or you got to mitigate their advantage on the glass. Well, Iowa State was dominant on the glass early in this one, and yet Arizona wins by 7 on total boards, and Iowa State won the offensive rebounds by 6 because they missed so many shots that they were getting long rebounds, and they were long distance shots. Arizona, though, had more second chance points because their shot defense was unbelievable. They were making it so difficult for Iowa State to score. This is a team that's good offensively. They're 18th in the country. They shot 29% from the field. They shot 23% from 3. Arizona, in points in the paint, didn't get a ton. Iowa State packed it in. They doubled. They made things difficult. Scored 24 points in the paint. But you know what stood out to me? It was that Arizona has relentless pressure on the rim. It was extremely physical, which I think bodes well for Arizona. You know, you can say it's extremely physical if you don't get fouls called and the bigs have their advantage mitigated. That is unfortunate. That happened against Kansas. That happened against Texas Tech a little bit. But extremely physical and continuing to get the pressure at the rim leads to foul pressure. Rim pressure equates to foul pressure, and that paid dividends. And that's what spearheaded the close to the half. It was 22-22, and Arizona closed on a 15-3 run. What was it spearheaded by? Free throws and layups. Those things travel. Those things show up all the time. And while Arizona got free throws and layups, Iowa State shot difficult to shoot threes. And this was a game where I don't think Arizona's best players played great. I mean, very early in the game, Braden Burries rolled his ankle. He was not prolific. He lacked his speed. He lacked his burst. 11 points, steady. And I'm worried more about his ankle than I am the poke in the eye. Hopefully he's all right in both. But he played. His game was still a factor. Bradley, 17, controlled the game, got downhill, made his free throws. His free throws looked more confident from even those first 2 than a lot of those ones he was kind of babying. He was guiding rather than shooting. Karchenkov had a bad game offensively, great defensively. Pete missed a couple bunnies, missed a dunk, or missed a layup that could have been a dunk on an alley-oop early, missed a couple mid-ranges. Defensively, I would say he was the star of the game. Locked down Jefferson. Put the tenor of the game very difficult because they said, you know what? I don't need any help, and I'm going to lock down single-handedly their best player. You guys take away the dynamic shooter, we'll say no one else help me. Deny passes out to shooters. Jefferson, important number, only 2 assists as well. Played it like a charm. Krivas, great game. Only 4 field goals, 13 points, and he had a great impact, even though 3 rebounds. First game in a while, I felt like Awaka has played his role and has been super comfortable in his role, and he had a 10-point, 15-rebound double-double. Arizona doesn't need prolific scoring from anyone. They just need steadiness and health. This team's incredible. They're really, really good. And the other thing is that Arizona took care of the ball pretty well. I'm not going to say great, but you look at what Arizona did is in 15 turnovers, the points off of turnovers led to 16 for Iowa State, but a lot of those weren't necessarily like transition layups. And this was a game where there was so much physicality that there were going to be inherently more turnovers. Would I prefer the number to be under 10? Absolutely. But I don't think turnovers killed them in this game because they got back, and their turnovers for the most part were dead ball turnovers as opposed to live ball turnovers. And Arizona able to win the fast break battle, and this is my point, 17-9, despite losing the turnovers committed by 4. And that stuff really matters in this. Steadiness, defensive excellence, and I just think that if you have the healthy team, that Arizona will find a way. And this is a team that's still banged up. I mean, Burries was hobbling out there. I think Pete's still getting his legs back, his endurance back. I think Awaka was nursing a sprained ankle recently, looked healthier in this one. I see the interesting part of this is all the stuff that Arizona had struggled with that you guys had mentioned and were appropriately mentioning I think we're fixable in terms of having the whole team. And another point is like Aristode. Aristode hit a 3 early. He denied the ball, had a takeaway. He missed that dunk. I really wish he made it. He had a putback dunk. But the point is, that's the 8th guy on this team. He also walled up against Jefferson a few times. And like if your 8th guy can stretch the floor and hit open shots and also can guard Momcilovic and shut him down at times, but also can guard against guards in different times. He defended AJ DeBonce, he defended Momcilovic, he defended Jefferson, and he does so admirably. Things are going to be good. So a lot of the things that we talked about is like, oh, they double the post. Arizona's gotten better at feeding out of the post. This is an uber aggressive turnover forcing team in Iowa State. Arizona did a good job. I think that Arizona also, when healthy, has more answers to questions. And free throws were a huge factor because the team was whole, so they could play with the force that requires fouling from the other team because Arizona is too big and too strong. Coming up next, we're going to look at some keys to the game that I laid out and see how they played out. Spoiler alert, I haven't looked at them yet, but I'm going to guess pretty well considering Momcilovic and Jefferson were non-factors. All that and more next on Locked On Wildcats. Workplace chaos, deadline stacking up, inbox overflowing, and one position you have to fill sitting open. When the pressure's on, you need the right hire. This is a job for Indeed and sponsored jobs. Indeed sponsored jobs helps you reach the people who actually fit what you're looking for, skills, experience, locations. So you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat for you guys that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours have made 27 hires on Indeed, according to Indeed data worldwide. So if you're hiring, spend less time searching, more time interviewing candidates who check all your boxes with Indeed sponsored jobs. When you need the right person, cut through the chaos. This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit and help get your job the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support our show by saying you heard about this on Indeed on the podcast section. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. I also want to tell you about Mazda, because Mazda, there's more to just the box score. This is Mazda's moving the game forward moment. For those who show there's more to just what's on the screen, there's more to the box score. And who shined the brightest to me today was Jaden Bradley. I want to give an emphasis to the seniors. And Jaden Bradley picked and chose his moments very, very well. Scored in the end of the second half, end of the first half, which built the lead, making his free throws. And his 17 points are more, and they were timely, meaning they were more than just what the box score shows. This type of performance reminds us what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and I never quit. We put that same passion into making every model. Highlights that make the real. What it took to get there makes it count, because there's more to a Mazda, because there's more to you. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats Postcast. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Appreciate you guys, as always, for tuning in to Postcast so I can talk to you guys. My guys, Rick, Tyler, a couple of the guys who are always in here. Lost Highway's always in there, and I want to put a highlight. He put a comment and highlight it here. It says, starting to figure out on D, totally outclassed Jefferson. He'd lock up Yaxel too. I remember talking to my dad before this game. I also talked a little bit about this in my preview that I did for about 15-minute episode. I know it's retroactive, but it basically talks about Koa Pete's importance. And I think you guys should listen to it, because everything we talked about it, despite him scoring 4 points, was in there. And I'll give you a little snippet of it. Basically, Koa enables Arizona to play offense in the way that they want to. He relieves pressure, he facilitates, but also defensively, he can hedge, he can switch, he can guard one guy and take him out of the game. Talked about that pregame, and I talked about a couple keys. The one key I missed entering this game's pregame and in the preview I did was I didn't talk about Bateman. Talked a lot about Bateman in that preview. So if you guys want to retroactively go back to it, check that out, because I think it's an interesting listen, and it talks about how Koa Pete's the key to winning a championship. So here were the keys, speaking of that, to winning this game. And then we'll look at the stats that correspond. My first key was take away Momcilovic and the three-pointers. Momcilovic makes them dynamic. He is not their best player, but he is their most explosive, and he must be taken away. And if he's taken away, they'll struggle to score. Spot on. In 3 of the 5 losses prior to that point, they're now at 6. he had been completely shut down. And in this one, he was shut down worse than any of the others. There's a readout on him. You top lock, high him the ball, and if you have the bodies on the inside, it makes it too hard on Jefferson and Lipsy, neither of whom are like super fast. They're crafty and good distributors. It makes there be a ton of pressure on the other guys, the Buchanans, the Toures, the Batemans to step up. And then I said, ideally limit Bateman from deep as well, which I guess is good. I said that because I'd kind of forgotten I'd said that. That's why I put an emphasis on that. And the little one I did earlier today. And then I said, make Jefferson score, not pass. Well, they tried to make him score. He tried to score. He shot 17 times. I only made 2 shots. And Koa Pete's length and athleticism put on a masterclass, his timing and his strength as well. The next one was do not turn the ball over a ton. Lipsy and Toure are ball hawks. They did turn it over 15 times. So the sheer quantity is a lot. The quality of turnovers, which is a weird phrase to say, they were better than you'd expect considering they didn't give up that many fast break points. The next key I had was win the glass in the paint battle because they're rugged, but don't necessarily score in the paint a ton, but they will what they will do well in is offensive rebound. So that was a pretty good encapsulation. Like the keys were pretty spot on in that regard because if you look at the statistics, Arizona had a low points in the paint total, 24, but they still won the points in the paint, 24-16, because Iowa State shot 33 pointers. And they actually shot fewer of them in the second half than they did at the beginning, where they shot 20 in the first half, I believe. And then the other part was rebounds. Arizona +7 because they've made Iowa State miss a ton, but they weren't good on the defensive glass, especially early. I thought Krivos was getting punked a little bit by Buchanan, but then they improved and they ran away with it. By even the beginning of the second half, they were up by 8 to 10 for much of the rebounding totals. Like that number continued to improve, which is really good, meaning that the defense was stifling. Then I said, handle the double teams that they employ well, spray the ball around, ideally hit some threes. Arizona shot poorly from 3. They ended up hitting 6 of 18, but I think the overall assessment is they missed and they kind of fell into Iowa State's trap, meaning that the dare shooters shot and missed. That happens. Still the right thing to do. And then I said, use speed to the rim, as Iowa State is a team that's connected on defense, but aren't necessarily the most athletic as a whole and don't block a ton of shots. Arizona didn't get the rim a ton, but what they did is have a bunch of rim pressure because of the bigs, as well as Bradley getting downhill. Then I talked about pop points, paint-oriented points, which is points in the paint plus free throws made. Arizona got 47 of those. I said I was hoping for 55. 24 points in the paint, not a lot. 23 free throws, very, very good. And the other part I'd note is this is a very defensively oriented game. 73 points from Arizona doesn't mean there's a lot of room oriented for extra points. Now, the other thing about this is, and I'm looking at some comments, and this is Tyler, I'll read this one. It says, Koa is the most important player on this team. Been saying this since he went out. Before I would have said Bradley, hands down. Bradley is necessary, but Koa is essential. I'd still lean Bradley just because he's a point guard. He's a distributor at times. I think that Koa's value was starting to be kind of besmirched by many in media, saying that he doesn't matter as much, and they were losing because teams have figured them out. And when it was clear to me, and I said this, that he was injured. And when Koa Pete's healthy, or even mostly healthy like he is right now, in my opinion, I still think he needs his legs under him. That passing the ball and what he can do on offense, along with the defensive presence he possesses, what he can do when he wants to score, but as well as where he operates from on the court, is very, very important. So, Tyler, I'm with you. The Bradley part is interesting just because we don't know what it is without him. Now, the interesting thing is I talked a ton about Koa's impact in that show. So I'll pull up the link. I'll put it in the chat. You guys can look at it. But it is titled, just because it's talking about impact, that the show is titled, Wow, Koa's Impact Explained. Is Koa the key to the championship? So to me, that kind of talks about his impact, because I think Koa has the most potential direct link to winning a title. But if you were to lose Jaden Bradley for longer, I would be a little more concerned. Okay, couple more thoughts. I want to talk about the defense. I want to talk about some different things they've done and how they specifically had a very good matchup for Iowa State I remember I was asked by you guys early in the season that basically what teams scare you the most. I said Houston. Arizona beat Houston. And then I said, and then someone said, "What about Iowa State?" At that point, they're undefeated. And I told you guys, I'm not that scared of Iowa State because they're so reliant on one player to hit threes. And I think that Arizona matches up very well with teams that have one guy, whether it's an AJ who's heliocentric with the ball, or one guy that leads to dynamic offense. And Arizona has played those teams very well. They've played many teams very well. The hardest part for them is a two-man game like Christian Anderson and JT Toppin with shooting around them because they have to scrunch in, and then they also have to play the defense. But to me, Arizona's pretty darn infallible because it's really hard to guard all their guys, and Arizona can guard yours more easily. And when they're healthy, they haven't lost. Like, it's hard to pick a fault. We'll talk about that and a little bit more next, as well as name a winner of the pick a score prize. I'll go through the comments and see who won that one. Thank you guys for sticking with me, and I'm going to talk about the Big 12 and just how good a conference it is and what it means to win the Big 12 outright. College basketball is nonstop, big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board, and now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with the college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever fits your read. You can mix spreads, totals, player props, whatever you want to match how you see the slate playing out. If you're interested, Arizona was favored by 7.5 against Iowa State. They dominated. That would have covered. Or you could have just gone money line and felt, you know what, they're going to win. You could play that for the game against Colorado on Saturday, or a couple of the matchups on a blockbuster Tuesday slate tomorrow. Go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats postcast. Arizona's defense. I'm going to start there and then get to some other takeaways. But Arizona's defense is so bothersome because most teams have a weakness, whether it's on the interior or that they sacrifice interior strength for lack of speed. Well, Koa Pete is able to wall up and have no help against one of the best players in the country. You guard against Jefferson, and most teams have to double because he's too strong for smaller guys and he's too quick for bigger guys. Koa doesn't need any help and limits him to 2-17. That's the difference between Arizona because they can do that. And then even if they didn't have Koa Pete, Tobe does a good job in that situation. Koa is different, but Tobe does a good job. Krivas. I mentioned these stats about how great Mo Krivas is. I'm going to read them here. I'll probably reference them again in another episode coming out tomorrow. But it basically says, this is from Sam Vecini of an NBA mock draft. Doesn't say that Krivas is gone, but it just highlights him. He says, when he's on the court, the opponent's true shooting percentage drops all the way to 45% versus 55%. When he's off the court, 55% is when he's off the court. Largely that's because they take 3 fewer shots at the rim per 40 minutes. And the other part about that is they shoot 11% worse at the rim when he's on the court. And opponents are shooting 49% at the rim with Krivas on the court and just 33% from 2-pointers outside of 5 feet. So he takes away floaters and dissuades the rim at the same time. And that's per college basketball analytics. So essentially you have someone taking away the rim and making you say that you basically have to shoot threes because you're not going to get layups. And the way the analytics dictate, it basically says take threes or layups. So then the next thing is they take away the three because they're huge. So you shoot mid-range jump shots. Mid-ranges aren't desired by the offense, and no one's made Arizona pay on mid-range jump shots. Rick, you said that Fran on the telecast, his opinion is that Krivas should win the Big 12 Player of the Year. They showed a graphic during the game, and he had Flory Badunga winning the Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year. I've been steady. I think Krivas should win it, and second place should be Badunga, and third place Tugler. Fourth place probably Karchenkov. It's just the position of center in team defense is more important than a perimeter defender. It's just what it is, but Karchenkov's equally as deserving of defensive praise. But Krivas would be my Big 12 player, defensive player of the year. And frankly, I would take him as the best defender in the country. In my opinion, the best defensive team in the country. The only other player that I would really look at as an alternate option would be a Daimara from Michigan. The next thought I have is, what does it mean to win the Big 12? Well, the Big 12 was very, very deserving of praise to enter the season, but I'd say they're better than the Big 12's expectation was. Because if Arizona was picked fourth, that meant that the expectation on BYU and Texas Tech was very high, and it was, but they were picked 8th and 10th in the AP poll preseason. And I would say that while BYU is underwhelmed, Texas Tech was right there before JT Toppin got hurt, and JT Toppin got hurt, and they still beat Iowa State. Iowa State was significantly better in the preseason than they are in the preseason. And the other part I would kind of contend with is, like, Arizona's going to be a 1, Houston's going to be a 2, Iowa State's either a 3 or a 4. Kansas is better than the Big 12 people thought they'd be. They'll be a 3 or 4. And then you just look at Texas Tech, and they're probably a 3 or 4. So you've got 5 teams within 4 seed range. And then BYU is worse than we thought, but the injury to Richie Saunders was very important in that. And the interesting part of this to me is that I think that the teams like Baylor that have NBA talent and had a bad season speaks to how good the league is as a whole, because they're bad, but on any given night, they can really push a team. TCU is another one like that. UCF is a good team. Oklahoma State, though Arizona beat them by 37, has beaten some of those better teams. They beat Kansas. So if you look at the conference as a whole, it's tough. You guys know this. But I think the representation of the Big 12 in college basketball is going to grow, because it's the best conference in America. And Arizona steamrolled their way through. And without injuries, who knows? They could be undefeated. But I think those injuries are actually something Arizona should be thankful for, as long as Koa Pete gets his leg and his conditioning back under him, because they learned to play in alternate styles. And they played through struggles. Anthony Del Orso significantly better to finish the season than he was for the month prior, in which Arizona was undefeated prior to that slump. Prior to the heating up from the slump. And I think that you learned how to play out of traps. You learned how to play when someone is being dared to shoot, because Arizona, quote unquote, can't shoot. So I think that those things are all good. Winning the Big 12 is huge. It's a brand builder as well. Like, Arizona can say, yeah, we went in a league that Kansas has won 17 of, and then Houston, since entering the league, had gone 2 for 2, and we pummeled the league with wins over every marquee team other than Texas Tech, and still a chance to hopefully right that ship against Texas Tech. And then if you were to say, okay, well, like the loss against Texas Tech, yeah, we were basically missing Koa Pete. Like, you can say that to any recruit, and you say, okay, look at my team. We have a star guard that's going to be a one and done. We have a star bigger player that's going to be a one and done. We brought in guys and told them to roll, and they achieved all defense in Karchenkov, all defense in the Big 12 of Krivas, probably all conference for a couple of those guys. Awaka had the humility of this guy to go and play after starting all those games last year, come off the bench and be the 6th man of the year. And then that Bradley will be a first team all conference player. And so should Burries, and in my opinion, so should Krivas. I'll get into the awards later this week. But the pitch to a prospect is, like, at any position, you will play an important role, and you can play in the NBA. Look at Carter Bryant, look at Pella Larson, look at Kashad Johnson. And then you look at this team's better and maybe has less hype around it in terms of prospect stuff. But, like, I'd take 4 of these guys in the first round. I hope they come back. But he can point to any prospect in America to look at the team right now and say, look, you'll swing the ball, you learn to play NBA style stuff, you'll get open shots, you'll play unselfishly, and you should come play here. And winning the Big 12 matters in that more than I think anything else in terms of future ramifications, because winning the Big 12 and being the one seed in Kansas City doesn't matter that much, because it's anyone's ball game there. Arizona deserves to be favored, don't get me wrong. But, like, the winning the Big 12 regular season is far more important than winning the Big 12 conference tournament. And we'll talk about that coming up. Now, last thing I want to do is reward the rightful winner of who was the closest to the score. Let's see if I can pull that up quickly, because you guys are awesome and voted on that, because I think that's fun to do. I'm going to kind of make that a tradition. We've got our videos. I'm trying to pull it up, but for some reason, while I'm on here, it makes it difficult. And Arizona, it's loaded now, so fret not. I got it. Here are the applicants. I'll go through all these quickly. Andrew Clayton, 88.75. That one's too high. A spanking. That was a good one from Johnny. 86.69, too high on that one. 85.81. 78.73, still too high. 80.68, 82.72. 74.67. So the closest I got is 74.67 from Dennis Joyce. And I believe my score was 77.70, something like that. So Dennis beat me to it, and we were all still too high because this defense is better than any of us thought. Thank you guys for tuning in to Postcast. Leif Thulin signing off with you, and I'll have a show up tomorrow morning breaking down this game, as well as a show talking about Tommy Lloyd's statements and just assessing the Big 12 season as a whole. So I'll have 2 shows out for you guys tomorrow, and thank you guys as always for tuning in. Bear down, everyone. I'll have a champion Big 12 champ shirt soon. I promise.